The 3 years to train for the android had come and gone, and though he had failed to become a Super Saiyan, Tarble was as prepared as he could be. So, he would venture into the city with some confidence in his abilities to defeat one of the androids should they attack him. He was probably the third strongest person here right now, after Goku and Piccolo. There was no word on where his older brother was, but he knew he wouldn't miss this. But we all know how this goes. Tarble isn't the first person to find the androids, Yamcha is, who takes a swing at Gero before being easily dispatched. The group still come to his rescue and Gero agrees to take the fight somewhere less populated while Yamcha goes and grabs a senzu bean. Goku vs 19 goes as it normally does. Goku is initially winning, but then the heart virus strikes and he starts to lose ground. 19 knocks Goku to the ground before beginning to drain his energy. The other fighters go to help him, but their path is blocked by Gero. Tarble powers up into false Super Saiyan before slamming his fist into the old man's face, keeping the android busy while the others go to help Goku. But he finds himself pretty much evenly matched with Gero. Of course, the other fighters didn't need to help Goku, since this was about the time Vegeta showed up. Vegeta powers up into a Super Saiyan before shooting Tarble a smug look. He'd had a bit of a wobble and Tarble had gotten ahead of him, but he'd closed the gap and then some. He was back on top, and the world made sense again. Vegeta proceeds to tear the android to pieces, but he's extra flashy about it to really demonstrate to Tarble that he'd well and truly surpassed him. Not that Tarble had time to watch his brother stroke his own ego as he was currently fighting Gero, and they seemed dead even. The fight would be put on pause as they both landed a blow on each other's faces. Gero would wipe his mouth before backing up. Vegeta had destroyed 19, and while he was stronger than 19, if he could only break even with Tarble, then he didn't like his chances against Vegeta. It was around this time Trunks arrived, noticing that 19 wasn't one of the androids he recognized. He'd rush to assist the other fighters. Eventually, Gero would resort to retreating as he does in the original, hiding from the fighters while trying to think of a plan. He comes to the conclusion that next to Vegeta, either Piccolo or Tarble were the strongest people here. Tarble was worn out from fighting him, so he'd be the easier target, but he'd no doubt get more energy from Piccolo. Eventually, he'd go for Piccolo like in the original. Gohan would knock Gero off of Piccolo, and Piccolo would eat a senzu bean before challenging Gero. Gero accepted the challenge confident he could win, but he quickly found himself losing, unaware Piccolo was only slightly behind Vegeta in terms of power. This was not going to plan. You look pretty surprised. I'd even say shocked. Well, apparently this went differently the first time, but we've had 3 years to prepare for you. Unsurprisingly, this was new to the Doctor. He had no idea how they knew, but he remembered they hadn't seemed very surprised to see him. Whatever the explanation was, he couldn't win like this. He needed to retreat to his lab and repair himself, and the perfect distraction would arrive as Trunks and Bulma show up. Trunks informs them that these androids are different to the ones in his time, and Piccolo calls Trunks by name. So, wait, he's my nephew? Tarble seemed pretty surprised by this. Vegeta was even more surprised, and while he was busy processing that revelation, Gero attacked Bulma with a photon wave to distract them before running back to his lab. Trunks and Tarble both assist Bulma before Trunks confronts Vegeta, demanding to know why he didn't help. Vegeta simply brushes off his concerns. Tarble, of course, knew he wouldn't care, which is why he didn't bother to confront him himself, as much as he wanted to. Bulma would tell the group where Gero's lab was and they'd split up. Gero himself was in something of a rush, understandably so since he had to go program himself a new hand. He had to resort to using 17 and 18. He was confident those two could beat them, and so long as he stayed out of their way, he may be able to avoid them attacking him. Vegeta, Piccolo, and Tarble could all cause an issue, and the new one he didn't know was an unknown variable. If Goku recovered, then he'd be a serious problem as well. He considered for a moment bringing 16 online, but ultimately decided against it. He'd save that for a last resort. He made it back to his lab with minimal incidents. Well, he had a short altercation with Krillin, but he wasn't a threat. By the time the other fighters arrived, he'd already brought 17 and 18 online, telling them to deal with the threat before heading to the sub-lab to build himself a new hand, inadvertently saving his life as he doesn't try to stop them from activating Android 16. He didn't really see the Z fighters beating 17 and 18, but maybe one of them if they got lucky, so he'd want to be back in fighting shape as soon as possible. He would barely avoid Trunks destroying his laboratory, which also destroyed the remote that he could use to shut down 17 and 18. Wait, what happened to Gero? Huh? 17 would look around. I don't know. Guess he must have run off. The twins didn't see much point in looking for the guy, they had a job to do. 16 awakens and announces that his only purpose is to kill Goku. The androids aren't really interested in fighting the other fighters, so they go to leave, only for Vegeta to follow them. Trunks tries to tell Vegeta to wait until Goku has recovered, but he doesn't listen as in the original, and punches Trunks before flying off. Tarble goes to check if he's okay, but Trunks rushes after Vegeta and reluctantly so do the rest of the fighters. Vegeta vs 18 is more or less the same. 18 breaks his arm before Trunks and Tarble rush to help him, only to both be taken out by 17. Same goes for Tien and Piccolo. I'd love a rematch whenever you wake up, 17 gloated. Krillin would attempt to talk the androids out of killing Goku, but of course this doesn't work. 18 would then kiss Krillin on the cheek before taking her leave. Gero had watched this entire fight over one of his surviving security cameras, and needless to say, he wasn't impressed. Damn brats, why couldn't they just finish them properly? Great, now those three were AWOL, and he had no idea what 16 would do after he killed Goku. He just had to focus on building his new hand. He could let 17, 18, or 16 kill Goku, but he'd prefer the satisfaction of doing it himself if it were possible. But if he'd learned anything from today, it's that he wasn't strong enough to do that, and he'd have to be smarter about this. When the rest of the fighters recovered, Vegeta flew off in a rage, sore about losing before Piccolo came to a realization. The gap between themselves and the androids. They didn't have enough time to bridge it through training alone. He knew what he had to do, and he didn't want to do it, but it was better than the androids wiping them out. He'd have to become one with Kami again. Though he decided to threaten everyone before leaving. Unsurprisingly, most of them saw through it pretty easily. Piccolo, as usual, demands to fuse with Kami, who seems hesitant. You can see everything that goes on down there. You know how dangerous those four are. 17, 18, and 16 are beyond the best of us, and Gero seems to have vanished. Kami would eventually agree to fuse with Piccolo, and he'd go to investigate Ginger Town. His fight with Cell proceeds as usual. Krillin calls Bulma to tell her they're moving Goku to Kame House before Bulma tells him about the other time machine that looks the same as the one Trunks has. Trunks and Gohan go to investigate, but Tarble decides to stay behind to guard Goku. Not that he actually stood a chance against the androids. Piccolo tricks Cell into revealing who he is and what he wants, as in the original, and Cell still runs away when he learns Piccolo was bluffing about being injured. Vegeta would arrive demanding to know how Piccolo got so strong. Piccolo didn't answer and instead decided to fill everyone in on what he knew about Cell. Trunks and Krillin would still go to look for Gero's sub-lab as usual, but they weren't just here to look for information. Gero was still alive. Gero hadn't had as much time as he would have liked. He'd fixed his hand, but he hadn't had time to make any upgrades, and they were already back. The pair would enter the lab, and Trunks would power up to Super Saiyan immediately, grabbing a hold of Jock to Gero. Perfect timing. You built them, so you'll know how to stop 17 and 18, and your other little project, Cell. Cell? What on earth are you talking about? Cell isn't nearly ready yet. He gestured to the infantile Cell being worked on by his computer. They'd filled Gero in on what was happening, who seemed greatly amused by the story. If what they were saying was true, then he could use these guys to his advantage. Kill 3 birds with 1 stone. Let Cell absorb 18 and 17, and then I can activate his self-destruct, taking all 3 of them out in one fell swoop. Gero, of course, had no plans of fulfilling his end of the bargain, but if you could get these idiots to help Cell, then that'd just make things easier. And we're just supposed to believe you? Krillin glared at the old man. No, I don't expect you to believe me. But if I am lying, Trunks here can kill me easily enough. Trunks would tentatively agree to Gero's plan, but he still told Krillin to bring the plans to Bulma, because they'd need a backup plan in the likely event that Gero was lying. Trunks would stay to guard Gero, but he wouldn't let him out of his sight. Piccolo and Tien continue to search for Cell, but they don't have any luck finding him. Eventually they're joined by Krillin after he gave Bulma the blueprints, but they still had no luck finding him. Trunks would go to find his father, dragging Gero along with him. Oh, you brought the other android. Good, I'll enjoy killing him. He says he can help us, but if he betrays us, I'll kill him myself. Around this time Goku would recover, and since he knew he wasn't powerful enough to defeat the androids or Cell, he'd decide to use the time chamber, explaining his plan to Tarble before the two of them left to go get Gohan and then Vegeta and Trunks. Hey, isn't that the other android? Tarble would immediately ready himself for a fight at the sight of Gero. Gero seemed to ignore him, however, glaring daggers at Goku. I am in no position to resist you, so for the time being I am working with you. If I may ask, how did you just teleport? I have no such information in my records. Well, I just focus on someone's energy and then poof, I'm there. Goku told Vegeta about the time chamber and he agreed to go, saying that he'd train with Trunks because I wouldn't make any progress with Tarble. Tarble wanted to argue, but it wasn't as if he wanted to spend a year with Vegeta, so he held his tongue. Well, I don't really want to bring Gero to the lookout, but I guess we can't leave him alone. Everyone would hold on to Goku, and after a moment, so would Gero. Just before Goku made the jump, however, Gero would simply let go. They appeared on the lookout, but with no Gero. Where'd he go? We must have left him behind. Go back and get him. Goku would attempt to focus on Gero's energy before realizing something. Gero is an android. He doesn't have any energy I can focus on. He tricked us. I'll go grab him. Tarble went to leave, but Vegeta simply scoffed. He'll be long gone by the time you get there. Since there was nothing they could do about it for the time being, Trunks and Vegeta would head inside the time chamber, and not long after that, they would feel Piccolo's ki flare up as if he was in a fight. And that's where I'll stop for now. What did you think of this part? I realize Tarble is taking something of a back seat since he still isn't a Super Saiyan, but he has changed a couple things. Don't worry, I've got a plan for him. How do you think Gero surviving a little longer could change things? He's not strong enough to threaten any of the Saiyans, of course, but if he's helping Cell, that could certainly cause an issue. Anyway, that's all for now. Bye.